What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video we're gonna make this bike right before us into an e-bike. So I'm trying out a different motor. It's finally arrived. We're gonna unbox it right now. It's called the Tongsheng Tsdz8. Tongsheng Tsdz8, that's what we've got. We're gonna try this out. So this is a mid-drive motor. It goes into the bottom bracket of kind of like any normal bicycle that has kind of like a normal-ish bottom bracket. It's very similar to a Bafang BBS02. So that's Bafang's 750 watt mid-drive. This is kind of a clone of the Bafang BBS02, but it is different in some ways. And the main way that this thing is different from the BBS02 is that it has a torque sensor. So that's kind of like the better, that's the superior version of pedal assist, is torque sensing, where it can actually tell how hard you're pressing on the cranks. So it senses the torque on the cranks, and then it powers the motor very smoothly. It kind of feels like bionic legs. So whereas the BBS02, that motor, it has a cadence sensor. So as soon as you would start spinning the cranks at all, the motor would just help you out however much you have the power set to, or the pedal assist, right? So that's different. You don't have as much control with cadence sensor pedal assist, especially when you're mountain biking and riding on trails. Cadence sensor pedal assist is not ideal, and that is why I've got this motor, the Tongsheng Tsdz8. So let's take a look at the motor. Let's get it out of here. So first of all, I like this carton, the styrofoam. Whenever I get a Bafang motor, the carton is just all like battered and damaged, and then like all of the cardboard is in pieces, usually, from Bafang. So I like that this motor is in a nice styrofoam thing. So here's the motor. Let's unbox it. Here's the motor. It looks very similar to a BBS02. Should maybe get my BBS02 and I could do a little comparison. Alright, so I brought my BBS02 out. It's over here on the right, the BBS02, and then we've got the Tongsheng Tsdz8. So they're very similar. So I wonder if you can use BBS02 chain rings on this Tongsheng. I don't know if that's gonna work. It might be different. I don't know. Alright guys, so I don't want to get too distracted right now comparing these two motors, but we can see that they're very similar. From what I understand, the Tsdz8, you can open up like the controller department. This thing right here, like you can open this thing up and take this cover off right here, the controller. Unlike the BBS02, where you have to remove this plastic cover first before, because it overlaps this part with the controller. So that's kind of one thing that's nice. I don't know. I'm gonna have to check if the BBS02 chain rings work, because it's like the pattern looks very similar. I don't know if the diameter is any different, but like it looks very close, like almost like the chain rings for the BBS02 might work. But anyways, so that is the Tsdz8. I would say that it's like, it's kind of like the same size as a BBS02. It feels like the BBS02 is maybe like a little bit chunky right here, a little bit bigger right here, but yeah, there's both of them. And so let's see here. The Tsdz8, I think, I don't know. I think the Tsdz8 is heavier than the BBS02, but maybe my left arm is weaker than my right arm. I don't know. Anyways, let's continue on with this Tsdz8 installation. Okay, so we've got the motor out, and then it also comes with some crank arms. And it looks like which one was this? This the left one? Yeah, so it looks like the left one has an offset to it, so that your kind of like your cranks are the same distance from the motor on each side, and it's not like a funny deal going on. So then there's also some zip ties down in here. We'll probably need more than 4. What else do we have here? So we've got a speed sensor. So the speed sensor comes with the speed sensor, and then it's got this little like magnet thing. I'll just keep this in the bag so that it's together here. We got the speed sensor that we get to install, and we've got like this installation tool. And so we'll need this part. I think this is the same as the Bafang tool. There's one right here for locking on the lock ring that you need to hook the motor onto the bike, and then there's one right here for, like, I think this is a bottom bracket tool that we may or may not need depending on which bike you have. And so we are going to remove the bottom bracket from our bike. That's going to be the first step. So this is a wiring harness. It's a 1T4 wiring harness. It goes from like the controller up to the handlebars, like brake cutoffs and a throttle and a display and everything. So this is the main harness. And then we have, it looks like, oh, these are a brake cutoff. It's like you kind of like stick a magnet. You stick these things onto your brake levers, and then it has a little magnet that detects when the brake is open and closed. So these are the brake cutoffs, and they have those yellow connectors on them, and these they go up by your brakes, and then it hooks into that wiring harness that we just looked at a moment ago. This thing, yellow to yellow. So then we've got a display. Let's see here, what else we got in here? We've got a throttle. It looks like one of these yellow connectors with the 3 pins in there. Standard e-bike throttle. It actually looks a little bit chunkier than usual. Let's unbag it. It looks a little bit chunkier than, I would say this throttle is a little bit cheaper than the Bafang throttles that I'm used to. But for this bike, the whole purpose is the torque sensor. So we're going to be pedaling. So here's the mounting hardware here's some spacers and like crank bolts, and it looks like these bolts are for the chainring, and some of these pieces are for mounting the motor to the bike. There's a couple screws in there and a couple spacers in there for mounting the motor to the bike, and then there's a couple screws to hook the chainring onto the chain, or there's a chain guard protector right here, and then that goes on the outside of the chain ring, which is right here, and this chain ring has a large offset. You see that? So that kind of, it goes on the motor, and it kind of offsets how the motor pushes the chain ring out from the bike. So this will go on top of this at some point, like something like that maybe. I don't know. Yeah. So the first step really is, oh yeah, then we got the display. And we've got some instructions from Powallon. So I'm gonna put the chain ring back in here. I'm gonna put the instructions back in here. I'm gonna probably put a lot of this stuff back in here for now until we get this thing going. We'll look at the display here. So here's the display. Let's see what display this is. I think it's called like a EKD something or other display. And so we'll take a further look at this display once I get everything hooked up and we can turn it on and take a look at it. But it kind of looks like this. So it looks like for now there's a plus, a minus, and a power button on it. Alright, so that concludes the unboxing. So let's get started mounting this thing onto the bike. Alright, so the first step in installing the motor on the bike is we need to remove the existing crank arms from the bike. So that's usually an 8mm hex to get the crank bolt out of the crank. Oh man, that was on there good. Wow. And then now, say a little prayer to the Walmart bike assembly gods, and I hope that this crank arm can pull off of here nice and smoothly. So this is a crank puller. This tool, it's a Park Tool CCP22. And so if you don't want to do this part, like removing the cranks and removing the bottom bracket, you could take this to a bike shop and tell them, I need you to take the cranks off of this bike, and I need you to take the bottom bracket off of the bike. So I want the whole bottom bracket shell just empty, and there's going to be a motor going in there. And the bike shop would probably do that, but in our case, we're taking the crank puller and we're screwing it on there. Till it won't go on anymore, and then I'm going to go like this and spin it around. And then we're going to use a crank puller as God intended, hopefully. And it also works better if the bike is on the ground for this. Man. It was on there pretty good. There was no way I was getting that with my hands. Oh, there we go. Now I can get it just fine. All right. So we got the left crank off successfully. And we're just gonna throw this. Well, actually, we're gonna take this pedal off of this crank arm because we're going to use this pedal. But we're going to put it on the crank arm that came included in the motor. Right, so I'll put that, let's see here. So this is the left pedal, and I'll get that going into the left crank arm. And then do the same thing over there. I'm going to use the crank puller to take the drive side crank off. Okay, so I got the drive side crank off. Now I gotta get the pedal off without hurting myself. Okay, so we transferred our pedals to the new cranks that came with the motor. So now we've got the cranks off of the bike. The next step is we need to remove the bike's bottom bracket from the bottom bracket shell. And we had to do step 1, which is remove the cranks, in order to get to this point where we can do step 2, which is remove this. And then I think on this side, on the non-drive side, I believe that this thread's on there the normal way. So let's see here. I've got a big... Yep. So I'm just using the bottom bracket removal tool to remove this non-drive side of this bottom bracket. It does seem like there's a sealed bearing in there on this one. It looks like. I think that might be the first time I've ever got a Walmart bike that had a sealed bearings in the bottom bracket. Uh-oh. What happened here? Oh, there it is. Alright guys, so one or more parts of your bottom bracket might be torqued on there quite tight. And so you're going to want to take the bike down out of a bike stand probably to, oh there we go, to get this off. But this side you want to, you tighten it, you go to the right to loosen the drive side on these bottom brackets. So I'm just loosening off the bottom bracket down there. And the tool that you need to remove the bottom bracket depends on your bottom bracket. So if it's got these little splines, you're going to want to like count the splines, those little notches, and then go look at what different tools there are. Okay, so I think we've got that thing coming out of there. Okay, so there it is. It's like a cartridge bottom bracket, so it's... I've never had one like that in a Walmart bike. Alright guys, so let's go back to the motor itself. And slide that thing over here. Let's get this thing out of the way. So then we've got all these wires. So let's flip it around. So then over on this side, we've got these lock rings. So here's like the outer lock ring. It says M33. 10 to 15 Newton meters. And then it's got this inner lock ring. M33, 40 to 60 Newton meters. And then it has a couple, looks like, what is that, like a 4mm screw holding this little plate. So we're going to take those two 4mm things out of here, and each one has a little flat washer underneath it, or it looks like a split washer. One of those little like split lock washer type things. And it looks like there's also some little spacers that I found one little spacer that just, oh here, there's another one right there. Okay. So when we get the motor like this, you get all the locking stuff off of there, and then the spindle right here is just ready to go. See that? So then we're just going to put this thing through the bottom bracket, and it comes in there from the opposite side. So let's come over here, and then we'll bring the motor through there. Okay. Alright guys, now one of the trickiest parts of these motors, installing these things, is like down here, you got to push the motor in here and then see how it fits. And it seems like the motor is kind of like touching my chainstays right here. So we're going to have to use some bottom bracket spacers. And I think I saw some that came with the kit. So let's go back and look at that. Okay, so in this little bag right here that has all these different, it has a couple crank bolts and all that stuff. It's got a couple bottom bracket spacers for us. And then I think we're also going to need these these little plastic circular spacers as well. We're gonna probably need all 4 of those, so I'm gonna take those out of here. And then this has still got some stuff that we need for our chainring, so I'll save that till we do the chainring. But what we need to do right now is I gotta take these bottom bracket spacers, and then we're gonna take the motor out of the bottom bracket shell. I'm gonna put these spacers onto the spindle right here like this. All the way back there, see that? To fill in that gap back there, and then hopefully with those spacers like that. So let's see, we're gonna get this going through here first just to see how this looks. Okay, so it seems like with those 2 spacers, we're clearing the chainstays adequately. You probably want, like, let's see here. It looks like there's probably like a couple millimeters in between the motor and the chainstay right there, so that should be pretty good. But then now it's hanging down, you see that? So we're probably gonna want it to be something more like this. Okay, so then this looks like it's for a shift sensor. So on the motor, we've got this, it looks like I've got an Anderson that goes to the battery. We've got this thing that goes to the wiring harness that goes up to the handlebars. And then I think this is for the speed sensor, this one that has a cover on it. And I think this one right here is for a shift sensor. So the shift sensor, I'm just gonna wire it up here along with all the other wires. Alright guys, so I've got the motor just hanging here. I'm still trying to decide which way I'm gonna route these wires. So I wanna take this shift sensor because these wires don't seem very long. I wanna take the shift sensor and then get this out and then figure out how long does this wire go and like where. So we gotta get the magnet first, and then let's get the magnet going onto the spokes. So we'll just, you wanna find a spot where it's as close to the chainstay as possible, and then this thing kind of goes, you zip tie this thing like in here like this, and then you put a magnet on the spokes and hopefully it's close enough. So it seems like the closest point that my chainstay gets to the spoke is probably like right here or something, so I'll probably have it something like this would be a good spot. So we'll have to use the, so first I'm gonna put the magnet on here at the point where it seems like the spoke gets closest to the chainstay. Like it's gonna be a good candidate for attaching, and then so you want the magnet to kind of like be facing where your little speed sensor is gonna be. So just like this, the magnet facing towards me, and there's like a big flathead screwdriver kind of thing on the opposite side. And then this needs to come within a certain distance of the magnet. So it seems like right here could be a good spot, probably, perhaps. So I'll just get a couple zip ties. So I'm grabbing 2 of these zip ties that came with the kit, and we're gonna get them going in here so that we can attach this thing. But then the main thing I'm curious about is how long is this wire, because this wire needs to plug, yeah, that should be fine, anywhere around here. It seems like we can just put it wherever we want here. Will work nicely. So I'm just gonna get my speed sensor going like right here, right where I put the magnet, and we'll get that zip tie going around there. Okay, and then the speedometer wire up this way to wherever that other little wire is here. So it seems like it's right here. So it seems like I can probably wrap this thing around. Probably wrap this thing, well, let's just connect it. We can always tidy it up later. So you see this little connector that's coming from the motor? It's got it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins inside of it, it seems like. So I'm gonna take this thing and then plug this thing into that. Okay, and then this thing is kind of a weird deal that doesn't have a whole lot of room to go anywhere. We'll have to figure out what to do with that. Alright guys, so this is the part where we're going to secure the motor to the bike. So make sure that you pay attention because this is an important part. Alright, so the motor is coming through the bottom bracket shell right here, and you've got these threads on the spindle of the motor, and then we can take this little plate, and I believe it goes like this. So you see that? See this little plate here that goes on here like this, and then it looks like we're gonna need 2 of these little spacers on each side. And then is this even long enough to screw? Do we have any longer screws here? Let's see. Alright, so I'm digging into this bag again because I think there's these 2 longer screws that we're gonna need. So let's get these longer screws out of there. So that was the bag with like the crank bolts and the chainring bolts and all that stuff. Alright. So I'm taking the longer screw, and then I think each side is gonna need 2 of these little guys, these little like spacer things. But you put the screw through the hole first, and then on the other side you want to get these little spacer guys going around the screw like this. And then we're gonna start getting that fastened into the motor. With a 4mm hex wrench. And I would just loosely get one kind of like going on there first, probably, and then let's see here. Alright, so I've got these 2 bolts like loosely going into each side of this plate, and then the main thing that we're going to do here is probably get a little bit of grease onto this thing. And then there's a little arrow on it that says which way to turn it, so we're going to be tightening it on there to the right. Make sure it's going onto the threads smoothly. And then you got this tool that came with the bike. Now when you use this tool, make sure that you don't scratch your chainstays, and like the motor is kind of like in the way of using this tool as well, so it's like you can only really like crank it either like right here or then over here you have a little bit more room for cranking. So I'll probably get all these wires out of the way so you're not cranking on a wire, and then continue tightening this on here. As you're tightening this on here, this is pulling the motor like this way, so make sure that if you have the wires going through here like I do, like make sure that they're not getting pinched here as you're securing this on here, because this could be smushing wires in a damaging way. And then we'll want to twist this thing up. Alright guys, so now I ran into a little bit of a problem, because it seems like if I put any more of the spacers over on the drive side than came with the motor, then this thing over here doesn't have enough threads. Like this nut, there's not enough threads. Like it's only threading on halfway now. So like if you want to get this motor to work on your bike, you got to figure out some way to make it work with the two bottom bracket spacers that were included, it seems like. So we might have to come up with a creative solution. Alright guys, so as it turns out, it seems like these two little spacers and then this long screw, it seems like I still need, let's see, 68, so 69, 70, 1, 62, so it seems like I need another spacer in there, but the kit did not include any. So I'm just gonna kind of like eyeball. I'm gonna put the spacers in here and then eyeball how much space is kind of like open. Let's see here. So it's just a little gap. I mean, I need like maybe like 2 millimeters of spacers, just like an extra flat washer or something in there, I think. So let's see. Alright guys, so I'm just taking this little tiny, I think this thing's got to be like 1 millimeter or something. I'm putting that in there as well because it just seems like it needs a little bit more spacers going on here for some reason than were included with the kit. An extra 1 millimeter spacer in there, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because I have a maybe it's because I have a 73 millimeter bottom bracket. I'm not exactly sure, but that seems better when I have that there. I like that a little bit better. Okay, we need another one of those. Here there is like a little, this little part right here that like pops out a little bit, and it looks like it's touching my chainstay, but like it's not really. But it seems like if I rotate the motor like upwards and this little thing goes down further, it seems like it might be touching the chainstay, so I don't know. I might have to file, like it's just like super tight, super close situation over there where I think I could file like a millimeter off of the motor, of the housing of the motor or something, and it would probably, see, as soon as I did that, it kind of like, see, I want to get this on there really tight, but it's like spinning the motor with it, and then that little thing right here like spins into my chainstay, and I don't want that thing touching my chainstay, and I actually think it scratched up my chainstay. So right now the motor is just kind of like hanging down, and I don't know, I'm gonna try and figure out some way where I can screw this thing on there and the motor is gonna stay put. We gotta figure something out here, some way to make this happen. I'll wedge this block in here, this foam block. Maybe, I don't know. Alright guys, so how I'm going to wrench this motor on here is there's this little thing that sticks up right here, and if you make this motor go all the way back up into the frame, like this thing right here will punch a hole up into your frame, and it's just wacky. So I'm going to take a piece of foam and I'm going to stick it in between this little bump right here and the frame and just wedge it in there before I start twisting this motor back, and then hopefully that'll prevent that thing. Man. So then the problem I'm running into here is over on this side, like this thing right here is just kind of like colliding with the chainstay, it seems like. So I need to keep the motor rotated like down like this so that is not occurring, which is very weird because it's hard to get this thing on there. It's hard to get this thing on there without, it's like you gotta hold the motor still as you're fastening this thing on here. Let's see. so that hopefully it's not going to be moving when you're actually riding. And then make sure that this little like bracing plate thing right here isn't like getting bent by this screw going in there. Like, you don't really want to fasten these two screws up until that lock nut is on there, because when you're tightening this lock nut, it's pulling the whole motor kind of like this way, right? So you don't want to tighten these two screws up until you're all done doing this stuff. And these things, like, don't go too crazy with them. Just torque them down till they're torqued down. Like, you don't want to strip out the threads inside the housing of the motor. So just make sure they're torqued down there nicely. And then I don't know, that thing seems like it's on there after I gave it the mallet. So this is kind of how it looks at this point. So now I'll connect the speed sensor. I'm just tethering down this speed sensor, and I'm just kind of tethering it to the rear brake hosing line so that it doesn't actually accidentally like go into the tire or anything. Alright, so let's take our wiring harness. That's this thing that had a twisty tie around it, but it's like the main wiring harness. And then that connects to the motor controller, which is inside the motor. And then these things have little pins inside of there, so make sure you just line up the arrows as you're plugging that in. So that's the waterproof wiring harness for our main kind of, let's see here. So I'll probably want that thing to, like, where'd all my zip ties go? So I'm gonna get some zip ties holding this wiring harness where I want it. So it seems like the dropper and the brake are right here, and I can just kind of hook the wiring harness onto there a little bit with this zip tie, just to make sure that the wiring harness doesn't accidentally go over and like get caught up in the chainring or anything while we're going. Alright guys, so now we can get the display on the handlebars. This is exciting. So it came with a little rubber circle thing that you might need. Alright, so let's see. I like this display because it seems like you can open... Yeah, you can open this thing up and get it on the bars without taking everything off the bars, which is nice. And then it seems like this is probably the top, so... And it does have another little rubber thing in here, in addition to the one that came in the box. So let's see if this fits. This is 1 Newton meter on this. Display is on there, and then the display is this little green thing. So we go find our wiring harness and get the green connector. Let's see, where do we want all this to be here? So we'll get this and then connect the display to the wiring harness, lining up the arrows on the waterproof connectors. Oh, there we go. Alright guys, so now that we've got the motor mounted on the bike, this is the part where I would like to get the chainring on there. So here, ouch, ouch. Here's the chain ring. Ow, here's the chain ring. We're putting it on there. Oof. Sometimes people ask me while I'm doing these things by hand, and it's because I want to make sure that I'm doing it carefully and I can feel the bolt threading into the threads and I'm not cross-threading anything, because a little bit of like impatience and doing one thing impatiently can mess up your whole motor forever, and then it's kind of like hard, and then you have like a fix on your hands where you have to fix something that should be brand new and functional. Okay, so we got the chainring onto the TST. What is this? We got the chainring onto the Tsdz8. Look at that thing, the Tongsheng. Now we're probably gonna have to make our chain longer. Let's see here. I wonder if we'll still be able to shift through the gears with this big, huge chainring. There's also this little plastic guard. And I guess you're supposed to screw these little metal screws into this plastic guard from the opposite side. What is this getting caught on? Alright guys, so I've got the Tsdz8 motor mounted on here. We got the chainring on there. I've just got this crank just like hanging on there. And I went through the gears and it seems like the chain must be back kind of like similar to the original chain ring position. So this offset chain ring seems like it fixes the chain line pretty well. But the problem that I'm having now is that the chain is too short. Now that this chain ring is 44 tooth instead of 30 tooth, I can only get up into second gear, and then when it's going up into the biggest cog back here, the first gear, it's kind of like the chain is too short and it can't quite wrap around this whole thing. So, and you can see this, the micro shift acolyte, it's kind of coming forward a little bit. So I think I need to add like, man, I think we need like 6 links on this chain or something probably. So I have another chain that's the exact same chain, the exact same kind. So it's a KMC Z8.1. And so I identified this chain by just like looking at the chain that came on the bike originally before I got it all like full of wax. And I ordered this chain specifically because this is the exact same chain that as the existing chain, right? So I want some more pieces of the same exact type of chain so that everything is going to jive, and we can just take a little bit of this one and then use it to lengthen that other one. Okay, so we're busting out this chain. I'm just gonna grab the end of this thing, and I need like 6 links probably. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that, and then alright, so I broke that chain and I'm just taking some pieces off it. There we go, just a little bit off of it. I'll package that back up. And we're gonna have to bring this with us on our travels, just in case we have to do any chain repairs. But so we've got like just a little bit of extra chain here, and I'm gonna break this chain and then add that on there to lengthen the chain. So what's probably gonna be best is to shift this thing down and or up into the highest gear, so the smallest ring back here, so that there's the most, so the chain is as loose as it can get. And turn your derailleur's clutch off if it has one, the tensioner or like a chain tensioner. And then we're just gonna, so let's see. I've put so much wax on this chain I can't tell if it has a quick link or what's going on with it, so I'm just gonna break the chain somewhere. Okay. And then I'm gonna get this. So when you break your chain off, just make sure you break off like a even amount of links so that you've got the kind of like your thing on one side and then that on the other, and you can link everything back together. Hopefully, if everything is the same exact chain, you can just add a little bit on there. Let's see. There we go. And then we can join this back together here. So then to join all of the chain back together, I would take the chain off the front chain ring. It's just easier to join it back together when there's no tension on it. It's also kind of easier to work on your chain when the crank isn't even attached. So then I'm going to finalize joining this chain back together and lengthening it. Okay, so we lengthened our chain and we're putting it back on there. GoPro is still going. Alright guys, so we lengthened the chain. So I'm just gonna put this crank arm back on here temporarily. Oh, just to go through the gears and see what happens. So let's see what it's like in 8th gear. Seems like it's going. What about 7th? Shift it up, 6th, 5th, 4th, oh, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. Oh, we got up there. Nice. Chain line in 1st is looking, it's looking a little bit questionable, but so I wonder what gear do I have a straight chain line in? What's the magic gear? Looks like probably either 5th gear or 6th gear. Can't tell. It seems like either 5th gear or 6th gear out of, what is this, 8 gears? So kind of in the middle. It's a little bit biased towards the high gears, but man, what is that, like that thing looks like a 42 tooth chainring or something maybe, so I don't know. We'll use that once in a while maybe. But yeah, so we got the drivetrain set up, and then make sure we can't shift it up. Let's see here. Let's make sure we can't shift it up off of the sprocket. Let's see. No, that seems good. Oh, what just happened? Oh, the chain fell off the front. Man, so it seems like I probably don't want to go into that highest gear. Or oh man. Dealing with chains is such a pain, dudes. This is the right crank. We want to look at the crank, see right here, it says right. And along with a bunch of other letters, but right, the R is the thing that we care about. And then so I'm gonna get, or no wait, we might want to get that chain ring this thing on here. Let's see. Man, I don't have a whole lot of faith in this plastic chain guard, but I guess it's something that comes with the motor that we get to try. Like, is it? So it seems like these little holes right here are where you want to screw these screws through to go into this chainring, and then it's got these little like standoffs that line up. You got to kind of like line it up properly, I guess, and then okay, so I just got like one of those screws holding this chain guard on here, and then I'm gonna get the right crank arm on here. So we've got the right pedal on the right crank arm going on the right side of the bike, and then we'll get the get this crank bolt going in there. There's a number of things that about the BBS02 that I fucking hate that I can tell are gonna happen with this thing already, and I haven't even used it yet. Alright guys, so this little pocket right here is where you're gonna want to screw those screws in for that chain guard. Alright guys, so I got the motor mounted on the bike. The speed sensor is hooked up to it, and I've got the motor hooked up to the wiring harness, and then I've got that going up the bike here, so everything kind of zip tied on there. And then the wires up here were a little bit funny with the wiring harness, but they always kind of are, so like it's just kind of zip tied on there. However, it you know, kind of, you want to make sure your bars can turn and everything and nothing is getting yoinked. So I've got everything on my bars like I would want it. I didn't hook up the brake cutoffs because I'm not going to use the brake cutoffs, but I've got the display hooked up, and then I did hook up a different throttle that didn't come with the kit, because the throttle that came with the kit, it seems like the wire comes out of it on the left side, like it's a throttle that's designed for the right side of the bars, but I don't want the throttle on the right side of the bars. I want my throttle on the left side. So I got a different thumb throttle. It's just a Bafang thumb throttle. It's the same connection, so I just plugged it right in. And so then the motor is mounted onto the bike down here. I have a feeling that this motor is going to slowly twist itself this way upwards like they usually do. I still need to finalize the mounting of my motor. Like, I need to make some kind of a modification to something, because I don't want this thing spinning around in the bottom, like in the bottom bracket, and they usually have a tendency to like twist upwards, and you can like just twist it all the way upwards when you're installing it, but like I said, like part of the motor back on the opposite side wasn't clearing, so like today I'm just putting this on there like this, and it's hanging down a little bit more than probably ideal. But I just want to try it out today. Like, I just want to try this out today, and then I'm sure eventually I'll come back, and I want to make the motor go up a little bit more if possible. But yeah. So I should be able to make this go up in the future. For now, it's just like this. But so the next thing is like this motor, it came with an Anderson connection that goes to the battery. And so if your battery has an Anderson connection on it, you can just plug it in, or you can get an adapter cable, right, that would go from Anderson to like XT60 male, and then you'd plug the XT60 male into an XT60 female on your battery, or whatever it is. You're going to need some kind of an Anderson to whatever your battery connection is adapter, right? So I'm actually going to change this to an XT60 male. So I'm going to take this outside, chop this off. There'll be a red wire and a black wire. I'm going to solder on an XT60 male connector. And then that is going to be able to plug in to my battery wires that I'm going to use. Alright guys, it's time to do a dry run here. So I've got little baby Samsung, 52 volts. 8 amp hours. I'm getting excited. My voice is squealing like I'm 14. So we're gonna plug in little baby Samsung. Plugging in the battery. Okay. Now, nothing has turned on yet. So I'm gonna hit the power button up on the EKD something or other display. Oh, there it is. Powallin. Look at that. We're in kilometers per hour. So let's see here. We're in 0. So I think this is our pedal assist right there, 0, and then it shows our trip in kilometers, odometer in kilometers, speed. So you can increase or decrease the assist with those bubs. Let's see here. So if you push this button, that little power button, it goes into the settings. So let's go into display settings. So select, and then we'll go to unit, select, and we'll go down to Imperial. That's what we're gonna do. And then auto off, 5 minutes, that's fine. Odometer reset, no. Brightness 100. BTRSSI level 5. Okay, back. What's information? So it says wheel size. So I'm gonna go into that, drill in, select. And I'm gonna go up to 29, and then select that. And then the speed limit, I don't think we'll be able to go faster than 38 miles an hour probably. That's what it says right now. Well, yeah, that is the speed limit. It's 38 miles per hour, apparently. Display info. So battery style, so I'm gonna say voltage. Let's do voltage, and then battery level origin. We'll do 52, and then go back. And then so let's go to, so in language, there's English, German, Dutch, French, Italian, Spanish, or Polish, or Czech. Back. Themes. What's theme 3, theme 4? So there's some color themes you can select from. Activated. So then there's a password, there's Bluetooth, exit. Okay. So it says we're at 58 volts, 0 miles an hour. All right. So, man. So we're in second gear. No, you gotta be careful with mid drives, because they turn the cranks, and like, you don't want your fingers down there, okay, bubs? So be careful. If your finger goes in here, bad news, right? So watch out for the gears and stuff. But basically, let's see here. I'm just gonna shift this into a gear where the chain line is straight. Let's shift it down a little bit. There. That's a little better. Maybe let's, so we're in third gear. All right. So let's put it up into assist 1. Also, my little speed sensor's working. You can see the speed on there. All right. So let's pop it into assist 1. And then so, I can't even really tell if it's helping at all. Does the throttle work? Oh, there it goes. Wow. There, check out the throttle. All right, check it out. So it seems like we're going 19 miles an hour, and it seems like my speed magnet is sketching out. Like, it's showing the speed and then it's going to 0. So I think the speed magnet must be like, it must be a little bit too far away. Let's see here. So I can tell that speed magnet's going to be sensitive. It's like, it's just barely close enough for the magnet to be hitting the sensor. So, but we're going 12 miles an hour, so let's see, how fast can we go in level 1, pedal assist with the throttle? So it says we're going 19. Let's bump it up to 2. I bet it's probably spinning out. And that bicycle gear, yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, it seems like everything is in order. I think I'm gonna take this thing out for a test ride. Oh, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Tongsheng Tsdz8 series. I'm just riding around on the Tongsheng. What are you guys doing? Let me know in the comments. Steve Cummings, what are you thinking, bud? I'm just cruising on the Tongsheng. I'm in 7th gear. Oh, torque sensor feels okay, feels all right. I can't wait to try the torque sensor on the mountain bike trails, but on the streets, I don't know. I would rather just throttle around on the streets. I can't go off any bumps though. This chainring isn't narrow wide. Oh man, I think I might need a shift sensor on this thing. How fast can we go in the 7th gear? Let's see. I'm just throttling, bubs. Throttling along. Seems like we gotta get in the 8th gear. There we go. Mid drives are a little bit crazy. The throttle has kind of like a delay to it. A little bit of a delay. It seems like it's better to shift when you're doing the torque sensor and not the throttle. Man, I can really feel it pulling when I'm in the tall gear. I feel like it could go faster, but it's being limited to 30. I don't know. Oh. I'm just giving it the throttle now. I think it's being limited at 30. Maybe not, I don't know.
It seems like when you give it the throttle, it kind of like eases on. Even if you give it full throttle, it still just kind of like eases onto the power, which is probably smart. Torque sensor feels better than a cadence sensor, but when you're doing the torque sensor, it feels like it still kind of eases onto the power even when you're pedaling hard. Like when you pedal hard, there's a slight delay when you first start. I don't feel confident enough that I can zip across the street right here, so I'm gonna wait. It is able to just rip off when you're kind of like when you're in a little bit of a high gear. It gets moving all right. A little bit scared to shift this fucker. Whoa. I'm scared to shift it under load. Oh. So it seems like with this stock chainring, I can't really shift down past third gear. I can use my third gear, but the second gear and the first gear, like the chain line is pretty bad. And I can't really do it. All right, here we go. I'm gonna go back. It's getting dark out. We're in 7th gear on the Tongsheng, on the, what is this? Micro shift. Something or other. I don't have a light. We're gonna have to be careful. We're still bending the brakes, it seems. Guess we're going this way. Man, this thing's got the torque, bud. Like, it just takes off. Oh, hard shift. Oh, we're in 8th gear. Oh, better keep it in 7th. But I feel like we better keep it, take it easy on the Tongsheng. It feels like the chain line in 8th gear is a little bit sketch. I need an internally geared hub or something. It seems like I can get going 27 in 7th gear. I'm just throttling. So the torque sensor, it feels okay. I honestly thought it would feel a little bit better. I expected better. Oh, chain skipping. It's when we downshift. But it does feel fairly smooth. It doesn't feel as twitchy as a BBS02. Like when you hit the throttle, it's just kind of like it starts up slowly. But that's nice in the sense that it protects your drivetrain from disaster. Torque sensor definitely feels better than cadence sensor though. Oh man, we're just gonna be doing some raw dog shifts with this thing without the shift sensor. It feels like it might be nice for mountain biking though. It seems like it should be better than a cadence sensor. These brakes are starting to work a little better. Oh man. It feels like even when you stop pedaling, it's kind of like still going for a second. Ooh, we're in 8th gear. Not ideal. It does seem smoother with the torque sensor because like when you're in a high gear on a BBS02, it's an easy way to wreck your drivetrain. But if you're just pedaling on this, it's still pretty smooth. You kind of have to stop pedaling and then shift. Like stop pedaling and wait a second. The torque sensor definitely makes you work for it. Oh, they're not kidding about that. Sometimes I just want to throttle. I think this should be really nice for mountain biking though. I'm gonna have to try that next. I think I need a different chainring though. Oh, terrible. All right, well, I think it's working. I think we've established that I need a better chainring that's narrow wide. But the torque sensor feels pretty good. I'm impressed by that. We're gonna have to see how it feels all mountain biking. And if it can keep up with all that shifting. I might need a gear shift sensor. Definitely reminds me a lot of the BBS02. Kind of feels exactly like it, really. It sounds like it. I wish the chainrings were compatible. I don't think I would buy this motor to ride it on the street. It feels pretty nice pedaling it up this hill right now though. I don't know if it's going as fast as the G6 or the G900 does. Let's see here. Let's shift down. Let's give it the throttle. I still feel like the G900 is a lot faster. This thing's more torquey on the low end. Like if you're in the right gear on this thing, when you start accelerating, you just take off. Whoa. Man, that torque sensor makes you work for it. So I would say this is just kind of 30-mile-an-hour cruiser. We're gonna have to get a better chainring and do some stuff to this to take it mountain biking, because I'm sure the chain would just immediately fall off if I took this thing mountain biking. So it seems like a good 30-mile-an-hour cruiser. I don't know. I haven't been able to get it going a whole lot more than 30 with this gearing. But that's not where I got it. I didn't get this to ride it on the street or go fast. I can't tell what the throttle is doing when I'm pedaling. I don't know if it does anything. It seems like it's fairly easy to max out this torque sensor. You don't have to be like a Lance Armstrong to max this thing out. Oh. What was that? That was scary. I'm scared. Well, that was just a little noise that happened there. What's going on here? Why am I going so slow? I need to get out of here. Hey, there's the cruisers. We gotta get into the 8th gear. Let's shift it up. There we go. It does feel pretty good to pedal it though, I'll give it that. Is this car gonna see me? Yeah, maybe. Alright, thanks for watching guys. That's the Tsdz8. It's working fairly well so far. So that was the maiden voyage. We made it. We didn't break anything. How's that for a maiden voyage? All right, well, we're gonna have to do further testing. We'll see you then. Peace out. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe later.